We're all in different time zones. So welcome to our new set of series on lilies and propagating lilies. We'll be talking about pods. This is our podcast. We'll be talking about lily seed pods and lily seeds, and then we'll be talking to have Steve tell us about the NALS seed exchange. First, we'll have Judith on, and she'll be talking all about the secrets of seeds and treating how to handle pods, and then and a little bit on embryo rescue, just a tiny bit. And then afterwards, Steve will be telling us about the NALS seed exchange and how we can help out and donate seeds and how to do the best things to, to, to donate those seeds, the best methods. Judith, you have met before, or most of you. Judith has been dealing with lilies for 50 years. Congratulations. It's more than 50 now, isn't it?
More than 50, yeah.
Yeah, more than 50. And she started off at Oregon Bulb Farms and did embryo rescue there. And then she branched out on her own later on into the lily garden, where her whole goal was to hybridize, breed, and introduce garden lilies. Not like the Dutch, they just want to do cut flowers. Judith was into garden lilies and anything that's resistant and can last longer. So she has thorough knowledge. She's a plethora of knowledge, shall we say. Then later on, we'll be having Steve Wilson. Steve has joined the NALS in 2017. He's in Bow, Washington, which is right on the coast, halfway between Vancouver and Seattle. Nice area. Are you right on the coast or are you just a little inland?
I can see this. I can see the ocean or the bay from our house. So yes,
okay.
We're right.
You're near Highway 1, are you?
Near
yes.
Highway, well, near Highway 5. I can't.
5.
Not Pacific Ocean. We're on the Puget Sound.
Okay, you're on the Puget Sound side. Okay, excuse me. Sorry. So okay. And then he originally was in the oil and gas business. He was it Wales, you said, Steve?
Yes, I actually come from about 5 miles away from where Yayan Evans
really
was. Yes.
Coincidences never cease. Anyways,
yeah.
his business brought him to the US and he just retired, and now he has offered to be seed exchange chairperson. So thank you very much, Steve. So I guess we're going to get started. Judith, you're on?
I'm ready. Okay. So here's our topic, and we're going to talk about, wait, this is okay.
With a little pointer too.
Oh, okay. I'm going to use that later on. I won't need it right now, so we'll just ignore that little red thing, but I can make it work. We're going to talk about lilies, seed pods, and seeds. So let's go. Okay, it's fall, and we all know this is the time we look at the seed pods. And our big concern for people who have never done this before is, well, how do you tell if this is a good pod or if we should have snapped it off long ago? What's a good pod and what's not? Okay. And here are these are pictures that Brian took of pods of the OTs, and we'll talk a little more about the shape of the pods. But look at the different pods, and if you know what the trumpety genes look like, and you'll see what's the normal shape. Is it full? Is it hard? Is it hard very late beginning to get soft? Is the color changing? If it's a large plump pod, it's fine, and like the lower right, that'll be good because that's that's got more trumpety genes. The ones on the upper right are long and skinny, but they're not fat enough. If they had a few little bulges like a snake that swallowed something, you might get a few embryos, but they're not going to be good. And then the ones on the left, like, can you see my little pointer now? Oh wait, here's my pointer. Anyway, I'm just going to ignore it. If you look at the pods, you'll see some of them are really full and others are quite variable. And the ones that are really full, it'll look like a nice turgid inflated balloon, are the ones we're after. Those usually are the ones with good seeds. Not always. Sometimes you get things like black beauty that just the hormones in the pollen are enough to stimulate a pod, but you'll soon learn you by feeling them what's a good pod and what isn't. Okay. And here again, this is labeled Oriental Cross, African Lady Cross, and you'll see more pods, and you can see where you can see where the best seeds are going to be, where the bulges are a little fatter. Okay. Every single type of lily has its very own distinct pod form, and you'll soon learn that. You can walk through somebody's garden or walk out in the field, and you'll know if it's a mardigan pod, because I don't think anything else has a pod with those wide, interesting weeds. And you'll learn the difference between a tetra and an Asiatic pods. The tetras are larger and crunchier and crispier. Okay. Next. Sure. Pod forms are determined entirely. People ask me this very often. Well, if I make a different cross, will the pod be shaped differently? But no, that's like saying if a woman has a different type of baby, is her body going to be different? It's not going to be different. It's entirely, the pod form is determined by the mother plant, whether it's full of seed or not. That's determined by the genes. But it will also tell us something. If you have questions, is this a trumpet or is it an Aurelian? And a lot of times you can tell if it's a trumpet, it's usually got those long, skinny pods. If it's an Aurelian, if it's got much Henryi, the pod will be shorter and fatter, because Henryi is a really short, fat, round pod. And so a lot of times it's very interesting to observe that and to look at the form and the shape of the pods. Okay. Next picture. At the end of the season, from August on, the lily seed pods began to mature. And we talked about this among ourselves, and I'm sure a lot of you have found the same thing. The ideal stage you want to get is when pick them is when they're just about ready to crack. But you can open them earlier, and it is amazing. When I'm doing embryo culture, I want the stage when they're about like this pod on the right. When they're changing from green to being white, the chaff is getting whiter, and then you can look on here and see where are the seeds that fertilization did take place. In most of the cases here, it doesn't matter that it took place because everything aborted way early. But anyway, we're looking to know when are they ripe? When is it ready? And you'll learn from your own crosses that there are fewer and fewer good normal lilies that set seed, because we have more and more that are bought from Holland that are triploids or are odd in their genetics and don't make big seed pods. But anyway, let's look at some more pods and we'll see if they're getting mature. Here's another illustration. This is a picture I took a long time ago to help you see what you're looking for. If this is the very same plant, it was a double nose thing in a pot, and the stem on the right was pollinated with compatible Asiatics, and the stem on the left was pollinated with, I can't even remember what it was, but they were not compatible, and you see the big difference in the pods. So if you felt it with your fingers, you would feel right away. The ones on the right are still hard. The ones on their left are getting soft and squishy, and there's not going to be much in there. You hope there'll be some embryos, but you have to open those before the embryos abort, because the reason the embryos abort is that the endosperm, the food supply, is not adequate. And that happens with some of the crosses, not until the very end. With other crosses, it happens pretty early on. As a general rule, I always put a date on my tags. And 6 weeks from pollination is really as early as you usually can expect to get embryos to live. So if they've aborted before that, it's too bad, Charlie. They were too small to grow. Okay. Now, here's an illustration of what you see in the field. And sometimes if the pods carry the red anthocyanins, they'll look like they're brown earlier than they really are. This is pumilum. This is a population of pumilum. And some of them had green pods and some had reddish pods. The pods on the left here are not quite ready to split open yet. You can see they're still green. So what I did for some of these is I just clipped a couple of them of the hole in fluorescence and brought it home and let it dry for another 3 weeks, just because I didn't know when I was going to be up at the field. And when these begin to split, they shake out all their seed really fast. And you can see 3 weeks later, they have turned brown and like parchment, and you can see where they split at the very top. Okay, next picture. This is the typical trumpet pod. When they are beginning to split, it's time, but you can do it when it begins to change color. You can do it a little earlier than when it first begins to split. And because really the last processes are just drying out the seed. And what we used to do at the bulb farm when they did tons of trumpet seeds is they had these big things that were old gladiola trays that had screening in the bottom, and they would just clip off the pods when they began to lose their green color and just put them in there and let them dry and open up, and they'll do it. Okay. These are some more of those same pumilum pods. So it can happen pretty fast once they turn brown, from the very first cracks to the wide open splits that spill out the seed. And it's better to clip them a little early than too late. I dry my pods in little paper boxes like this sometimes, or if I just have like one pod or two pods, I'll put them in those little solo cups, paper cups like you would have, and I stick those in mini muffin tin just so they don't tip over, but you can put them on, you know, anything like that to let them dry. And you can tell when the pod is crispy. You can tell when it's really dried and open and crispy, then it's just like shelling out your peas. Ruth Class used to open them very early sometimes, and she found that if the seed was going to be too wrinkly, then she would flatten them in between the pages of the Sears catalog so the seed would dry and look normal, and hers always germinated. So they're not, if it's nice, normal, fertile seed, they're not as pernickety as you might think. Okay. So once the pods are dry, you can just look at those and you can kind of hear them crackle. It's easy to shell them. You just hardly have to touch them and all the seeds fall out. And so I just shell mine into a wide round bowl. And oh wait, oh yes, for sure. It depends on, I'll talk about that question in a minute. I'll finish here. You shell the seed into a wide bowl, wide enough that you can blow. What you do to clean them is you just shake that and puff, and you can see the chaff. Look at the one on the far right, and you'll see I've blown it in such a way that the chaff blows up to the top. A lot of times I'll do this over my kitchen sink, because then if you blow too hard, you'll hear the sound of the seed hitting there. But just a bowl that's easy to shake and blow. And you can look in the middle and you can see the seeds that are good and the seeds that are not. You know, the seeds that are a chaff, or maybe they have a little tiny embryo, but you see the good seed is way heavier, so it's very easy to separate them. Okay. Oh, I'm going to go back to the question about should you not let too many pods form. It's just a simple matter of where you want the carbs to go. If you want a lot of seed, then the plant can give you a lot of seed, especially things like the trumpets or like pumilum. It can send all the carbs into the seed. And when you dig the bulb in the fall, the bulb may be smaller than when you planted it, because all the carbs went into seed production. If you want to have to keep the bulb getting bigger, you don't set so much seed. So you just have to be aware of that. And that's why, that is why they just bud everything in Holland. I don't have to disbud much in my field, because I already know which things are going to set a lot of seed and which things will not. So you have to think about the purpose of the plant you're growing if you want to make a lot of seed with it or not.
I'll interject. Also, trumpets have a tendency to produce a lot of seed.
Oh yeah.
Unless you deadhead them,
yes,
you will end up losing your trumpets in a shorter period of time.
Yeah, because you think about, and every one of those pods will have 300 or more big fat seed. So you can end up with, you know, that there was nothing for the bulb to grow to use. So, but there are not many lilies that are so heavily fertile anymore, but you've got to be aware of it. So it's very easy to snap them off early. Okay. And here's another one when I had just a couple of pods and I just used a cereal bowl and blew off the seed, the chaff to one side. Okay. I think a lot of you have seen this. You know what it looks like. Lilies have, just like they have a variety of bulb forms, they have a variety of seed forms, as well as the pod forms, but every good seed has got an embryo at the center. And you can see this in most of the lilies. It's easier to see if you have a light box or something like that, and you can use any form of light underneath to see it. Sometimes I'll just hold a seed right up to the window, but you see the little line down the middle. And you can also see when you look at this what the path was, that the pollen tube where the embryo starts, and this is very helpful in embryo culture because the pollen tube enters what will grow into this little sac and be the whole schmear. It comes in and it fertilizes the egg and it fertilizes the endosperm. It's double fertilization. And so sometimes you can get endosperm, but the embryo is not going to work with those genes. But always, if you've got a good seed, you've got a nice thick endosperm, the food supply, and you've got an embryo that's the new baby. Okay. All right. Here's some more things where you can see it on a light box, and you can see, here's where we've just shaken a little bit out and you see the chaff and you see the heavy. Sometimes you see really dark seeds. Sometimes they're dark just because they have red anthocyanins in them. Sometimes they're dark because the endosperm has already died. But in this case, these are pumilum seed and things like that. So the seed is, you see the difference when it's been, when we've blown it clean, when we've cleaned it, and then what we've done is called candling. It's like when you used to hold things over a candle and see to get rid of the last little bit. That what you really would like to send to Steve for the seed exchange are the ones on the right side, but the left side of that's part. You see, those are all good seeds, and then there's just a little bit of chaff. But you don't want to blow so hard and be so fussy about it that you blow out good ones just to make sure they're all good. So if you end up with 5% that are not good, it's not a big deal if it's a lot of seed, but if it's going to somebody who's paying for 15 or 20 good seeds, they want them to all be good. So candling them over a light is worth your trouble. Okay. And I do that, like for the lily garden, I still do the seed orders because I have the seed freezer in my garage. And I always count out, if the people have ordered 50 seed, I always count out that there are at least 60 good seed in there. So, okay, there's more comments here than you would really probably want to see. And maybe I should ask Brian to say what he was going for with these particular crosses, but it shows you, we'll see with some of these.
Well, this is a wide cross.
Yeah.
Madelon is a new TA, and Peaches on Chocolate is one of my hybrids, but it's a tetraploid. So I was trying to see if we could get a TAA type deal. And so the pods looked really good. So I sent them to Judith, and these were her comments.
Yeah, it looks like a good stage. Thin embryo sac. See, and I always put, and I'll put, if you should try it again, if the embryos have died, I'll make those comments. And it's good if you make notes of yourself with your seed set. Sometimes I do this. I just have I'll just write it on the back of the tags and stick them in a jar of the ones where I don't get much. But a lot of times this will tell you if the reputed parentage is really right. And when I look at this, I don't see any trumpet traits whatsoever. Do you? When I look at this plant?
Yanis has said that these are probably what Yanis, what did you think the background was on these? They were
Yes,
ALs?
yes,
They're-
LATs or
They're
some
T
mixture
blank,
of
blank,
these.
blank, blank, blank. So there's this, so what it boils down to is there's so little trumpet ancestry left that I don't see it there.
No.
But nonetheless, I don't see many embryos. So I think it's good to, if we try this again, and we'll look at the bulb form and we'll see what we get.
I think on the next slide we show where you've dissected the pods.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Here.
And these
Oh
are
no,
from
this is tiger babies. I take that back. But here,
Oh, I'll talk about that, Patrick, in a minute with your question. Yeah, and this is what when open, and this is pretty typical for tiger babies, that I don't see much endosperm. I don't see many embryos. I'll see a few what I call a black dot where the embryo died when it was really teeny tiny. And I didn't find any of these in my last lot that Brian sent, so I don't have a good close-up picture. But you can look at this and you can see, like in the bottom picture, mostly what you get are these that are chaff, or you get some that are thick, but there's no embryo. You don't see an embryo there. And yes, it does make a difference if they're thin and transparent or if they're thick and opaque. The ones that are opaque are the ones that are more likely to live. The thin ones, I usually just culture those that where they're really, really thin and transparent. I usually culture those. I do not stick them right under the lights. I let them keep growing a little bit, I hope, because I'm always hopeful. They just look so puny and thin and not normal because they could not make use of the endosperm, and I'm going to give them a nice sugary food supply. But the ones, there's a big difference, and you'll see it right away. I wish everybody here could feel some of these. I should do a workshop sometime and bring some in that I know have mealy or gummy endosperm, and yet there's a nice thick embryo in there. So anyway, those are the kinds of things you're looking for. And Patrick, I found almost exactly the same things that you did in the last bunch of pods that I did. So I think we're on track in what we're observing. Okay. Okay, here's more pods.
and this is an LA crossed with an Asiatic.
Yeah. And you would expect to get a lot of good embryos there. That's what you would think if the LA is, most of those are the early ones are all triploids and the other things, Patrick. And so if you're using a tetraploid pollen, that's when you're likely to get the best things from them. And you do usually get pretty good sized embryos. But unfortunately, you only get those when you pollinate back to the Asiatic. So eventually they're just genetically almost all Asiatic. And
Yeah.
I always want them to be more like, I want the TAs to breed back to the trumpets. That's what I want to get. And the longiflorums to get, more, to be able to breed back in the other direction too. But anyway, let's see what we found. Okay. So here's what we got. And here you can see a really watery pod turning brown. And only a few seeds. I went through this whole thing, and if you look at the upper right picture, you'll see there are 4 there that have a little embryo. See that are beside the paper. You see the little white embryo in there, and you can see the endosperm is not white and thick the way it should be. It's just gummy and watery and almost gone to nothing. So I spread them, and I use this paper that you see. I use little pieces of newspaper that have not, newsprint that trace back. I've been using the same ones for 25 years from our lab, that we got this from a newspaper company that had them cut into 6-inch squares. And I just wrapped them in aluminum foil and cooked them in my oven. And that's kind of handy to open things on because they absorb the water. But then I put them off on the black. That's my transfer box is just open against a black bottom, and it's easier to see things that way. But you can see if you took a scalpel and just pressed it against and I always point the seeds up. So it's like the pollen tube came in at the top of those seeds that do show an embryo. That's where the embryo, if it's small or short, that's where it'll usually start. And if you just press the tip of a scalpel, this embryo will just pop out. And then you get everything in between. You get gummy ones to soft, crunchy ones. But when you feel a normal endosperm, the normal food supply, it should be woody. If you ever have tried to cut an embryo out of a normal ripe seed, it's very difficult to do because the food supply has dried and is full of good things and is hard. So when it's gummy, watery, goopy, soft, then you would not get these seeds if we had left them to ripen would not be normal seed. And then sometimes you get that there are just a few that would be normal. And sometimes I'll think, well, I want to do this because I want every single one. Okay. But you see there are a lot in here that are not. Most of them are not. And sometimes it tells you, I always do note how many days from pollination. I learned this from Len Marshall, and it'll vary with the different crosses, but then I'll know to repeat this the following year earlier or later, depending on what I found. So, and he always wrote the temperature as well, because the temperature at the time you pollinate a flower makes a big difference in your seed yield. And that's what if what the problem is not that they're genetically incompatible, but that they are genetically incompatible in their alleles for compatibility, but not in other reasons. They're too inbred. If it's really hot, you can break that. And what happens is the pollen tube goes down a little ways and then it stops. It's just like an immune response. But if it's super, super hot, it doesn't stop. So you get around that by, if it's a hot day, or by cutting the style is another way you can get around it. But those are just kind of routine things to watch. But look at these seeds and think, when Brian sent these pods, a lot of times it takes over a week before I get them. So they've been in a box in the dark, but these little tubes have worked very well. Once in a while, we've had problems when they got wet in transit or something like that, but it's held up pretty well. So, okay. And then here, other similar crosses, and you can see the difference. You can see how sometimes the pod looks perfectly green, but when you open it, you see it's already, there isn't anything much. You hope there will be. Oh, if you look on the lower right slide, the lower right, you see a little brown dot there in the middle of the seed.
Yes.
Just a little yellow.
There you are.
There, that's where an embryo or the little sac began to develop and aborted very, very early. And so it's already black when you open it. Some of the seed, especially, I used to see these in the June fragrance hybrids. A lot of times they wouldn't abort until the very end. And then you would have these big puffy pods that were black when you opened the pod. But if you had cultured them 3 weeks earlier, you would have had really big embryos. Okay. Now the embryos are big in those cases because they were polyploid, but it took me a while to figure that out. A lot of these things, it took me like 20 years to figure these things out, but you keep thinking about it. So anyway, you'll look at this pod on the left and you think, oh, that's a great one, but look at all the empty seeds,
But that was a very wide cross. Fredo, the Fredo-like was, I think, supposed to be Fredo, which is an LLO, and I crossed it with an OT and a trumpet or Aurelian. So,
but I think that encourages me to believe what you're crossing, that you are. You told me you don't always protect your pollinations, but I think this is a good indicator to me that these were the cross you made these embryos were what you thought they were.
They were.
Because that's how you can tell when somebody doesn't protect it or they think, oh, I don't need to worry about that. And you open it and it's got nice hard seeds with long straight embryos. You just think, oh, you wish, but it's not the cross they said. Or the cross that I thought it was, everybody has had this experience and you soon learn what is and isn't normal. Okay. Okay, this is Darmcrook's method of what happens if you live where it gets cold too early and your pods are never going to ripen. he has a potato method. And I told this Jerry Vandersong was very frustrated a couple of weeks ago, and he has all these pods that he pollinated really late, and they're not. And I said, "Oh, use the potato method." So he sent me a picture. He had done the very same thing, and it was working beautifully. So, but you can do it like if you got the whole stem or the whole inflorescence, you can put it in water with a little sugar. But I like the potato method that very well. I think that's good. And I'm going to do that. I've got a few things I need to clip that are from Henry I. and Aurelian crosses, because often we plant those too late in the spring. Or if I want to breed with Rosstornii, I'm never going to be able to do that. The harvest begins before Rosstornii even blooms, so, or speciosum, there are a lot of the things that I always think, how in the world do they ever produce their pods in the bosom of Mother Nature, because they're so late, but they're also from more southerly forms. Okay, so don't forget the potato method. Next. Okay, here are some pictures. I think everybody who gardens knows the difference between vegetative and sexual propagation, and why we use seed propagation. Vegetative means it's a piece of the vegetable of the plant. Everything is still a piece of the original mother plant. Stem bulbils, dividing your bulbs, stem bulblets, scale bulblets, they're still all traced back to or from the body of the mother plant. And okay, next slide. The reason, so just what we said, so all of those are genetically identical to the mother plant, the source plant. Whereas when we're using seed propagation, every seed is a distinct genetic individual, because you've got the mother's genes and the father's genes contributing. So even if you produce a pound of seed of something like the old trumpet strains, you will still see little differences in every single plant. Okay. And that's the disadvantage if you want them to all be identical, but it's the big advantage if you want to make progress. This is a good illustration. These are these wonderful pictures from Rick he just has the most terrific pictures of how distinctly different every seed is. And you look at these, and as you collect your seed, you look at the wing, and you look at the endosperm part, and you look at the shape of the embryo, and you know that these are different. I love the one in the middle, which is like Mardigan album. The white seeds are always white flowered plant too. Those genes are linked. And the brown ones, sometimes they are, but usually they're not. So you can actually, that's something, you don't have to grow them to separate out the white ones, which is kind of fun. That's not always true, but a lot of times it is. But look at how distinctly different all of these are. It's just amazing. Okay. I like that he's got a scale too. That helps a lot. And you see, when you don't have a light underneath, it's harder to see the embryo in the middle, but you can still see it here. You can still see it. And you can see where the pollen tube came in, where there's that little indentation at the point of the seed, which was the top, where the pollen tube comes down the style and into the ovary, and it does the tube nucleus that is coming down divides, and so it has two nuclei in there. One separate, one does the ovule produces the ovule, and one produces the endosperm. Okay, look at this, and you can see when you put the light under there how much easier it is to see. But look at the distinctiveness. Okay. Next picture. And some of the seed is so tiny, you just cannot believe it. You look at the seed of something like Talliense, or some forms of Formicenium, and they're so thin and small, you just can't believe they can survive, but they do. So you just some have a really wide wing that helps them float and helps them disperse in the air. Okay.
Yeah, this is Formosanum. That's what this
it
was.
looks like to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's Doricum, and that definitely, okay. And then here are pictures that show, and I think most of us know, you have to know, is the seed going to germinate epigeally or hypogeally? And that just means it's the first thing that we see above ground. The first thing that happens, does it happen below ground, or do we see it above the ground? And what comes out of the seed is the embryo. It comes out, and with hypogeal seed, it comes out and it develops a little bulb. And out of the bulb will come the first leaf once it's ready to make a leaf. So that you may not see anything happen until the following spring. You shouldn't expect to see that. And here you can see the sequence. The root comes out, and there's the bulge at the bottom. And with the epigeal seed, the quickie normal seed that we think of as the easiest, it comes out. And it's more like number one. There'll be a little place just a little ways along there where you'll see that the new leaf is going to form without the bulb. And then out of the new leaf, each leaf will develop a scale at the bottom. So, and with the hypogeal seed, by the time you're ready to plant it in the spring, I always start mine in little plastic bags. There may be nothing left inside the seed, except they're just like little husks, because all the food went into growing the bulb. With a epigeal seed, pretty quickly they'll begin to form green tissue or green leaf. And you can break the hypogeal seed usually needs a period of cold before it can make a leaf. But if you're really in a pinch, you can scrape off the seed coat, or you can you can plant them where you have to not let them dry out. But if they get light, that will break that dormancy sometimes. So it's not 100% reliable, but it's pretty reliable. Okay. So it functions more like a scale. The same thing is true with the scales. If they're in the light, a lot of times that will break the dormancy, so they no longer have to have the cold. But as a general rule, if you're handling a lot of these, you need to know what to expect and how to handle them. Okay. And here's another good picture you can see of the little sprout coming out first. The root comes out first, and then if it's an epigeal seed, about a third of the way up from there'll be a little bulge of tissue, and that's where you'll be able to see it. That's where the growth for everything will come out. Okay. This is such a good picture. And in here you also see how the seeds look almost, the contents look almost empty because they've used all their food to grow this little bulb. If you look carefully here, you'll see that they have nice little root hairs too, all the little seedlings. And that tells you, when you see root hairs, it tells you have the balance between air and water just right, because they have to be damp enough to sprout. But if they're too dry, they won't sprout. If they're too wet, they can't either. They've got to have air. So sometimes when we were doing lots and lots and lots, just pounds of these seeds, we would go through the hypogeal seed around Thanksgiving time, around November. And if nothing much was moving, we would open the bags and just shake in some water with our hands, just sprinkle a little more. And we just said that they needed just a little more water, but you have to be careful not to let them be overlong. So it's really the same as with scales. That's how you can see with scale bulblets, if you have the media just right. The air is as important as water. You have to have both. Okay. Isn't this great? This is Rick, who did all these wonderful pictures. I just am so grateful to have them. And I told him I wish he was sitting beside me while I was doing these embryo cultures, because I'm not set up. I'm doing everything, and I don't want to get my hands dirty, and I don't want to get the embryos dirty, but I'm trying to take pictures to show Brian, and it's hard to do, but I'll need to just do a few extra pods where I don't care what happens. Okay.
And the next one is a video from Jim Alt, and he's going to show you how to create seed.
Hi, I'm Jim Alt. I'm the plant breeder at Chicago Botanic Garden, but today you're going to see my breeding program in my backyard in Libertyville, Illinois. This is the show that you don't have to be a professional at a botanic garden or nursery to do your own plant breeding. I am a lilyaholic. I love lilies, I grow them, I breed them literally by the thousands. We're standing in front of some trumpet lilies that have come into bloom in the last few days, and these are lilies that I'm breeding for their hardiness, for their fragrance, for their different colors. This is a very typical trumpet flower, shaped literally like a trumpet with the recurved petal tips. Wonderful, strong fragrance in the evening. To other trumpets like this one over here with what they call pico tea, or the pink or violet edges along the petals. What I'd like to show you is how to cross-pollinate lilies. It's actually a very simple process. Yesterday I came out when this flower was just starting to open, say like either of those tomorrow, and I would remove all the anthers from it. And so here's a flower that's open, and you can see the anthers. And what I'm trying to do there is prevent the flower from self-pollinating. And then the other flower that I'd like to use as a parent, let's for instance talk about this one over here. I will pull the anther off of it. I would caution you that lily pollen stains rather dramatically if you get it all over your clothes, which of course I do. And it's just a matter of daubing pollen all over the stigma like that. How do you know when it's the right time to do it? If the stigma is real wet and viscous, looks like it has a coating of honey on it, that's just the right time to pollinate it. The pollen will stick to that very nicely. And I just happen to have behind my ear as a fashion accessory this pencil with a piece of aluminum foil that I just simply put over the end of the pencil to make like a little cup, and that will go over the stigma, and then I'll kind of close it down like that, and that'll keep anybody from coming along and pollinating that flower after me, like hummingbirds and bees and anything else. And then any cross that I make, I go ahead and label it. I give an accession number and write down the other plant that I'm crossing onto that lily. And that's all it takes. We're now lily breeders. This seed, if that cross takes, the seed will ripen throughout the rest of the summer. September, October, I can collect the seed, germinate it over the winter under lights in the basement, and in about 3 years' time have lilies blooming again. The lilies you're looking at in this bed are anywhere from, I'd say 5 to 10 years old, so they've really hit their stride at this point. Here are the two groups of lilies that I recommend to grow in your gardens in northern Illinois. The trumpets that I'm surrounded by, grown for their huge stature and wonderfully fragrant flowers at night. Typically these bloom in late June into early August. And then the other group of lilies that I would recommend are the Asiatic lilies that I'm surrounded by, especially commercial cultivars like this one, Morden Butterfly. These will give you dramatic color in late May, June into early July. They do not have the fragrance of the trumpet lilies, but they tend to be quite hardy and frost tolerant and come in a variety of colors and flower shapes as well.
And now we have Steve. Steve, you're on. We're going to be talking about the NALS Seed Exchange and how to help out and donate some seeds and the best method of doing that. Okay, Steve, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Brian, and thanks, Judith, for setting us up for the discussion about the seed exchange. One of the important things to note, if you ever have any questions around the seed exchange, is this email address on the right-hand side, seedchair@lilies.org. It's also on the website. So yeah, if you ever need to get in touch with me with any questions, that's the place to start. So on to the next slide. Many of you on this call will be very familiar with, the North American Lily Society, its website, www.lilies.org. We run a seed exchange annually, and for people who are who like plants, a seed exchange is the great advantage of being part of any horticultural society. I'm a member of the Mecanopsis group. I'm in the North American sort of Primula Society. And so all these sort of societies have a seed exchange, and it's a great way of being able to grow and experiment growing plants that, typically you can never get from a garden center or from a mail order catalog. So we run the seed exchange annually. This is the first time that I'll be running it. Ideally, we would like seed donations by the end of December so that the seed list notifications get sent out in mid-February. And one of the advantages, if you're a donor, is that you get a 2-week early access period to the seed exchange, and then the regular sort of rank and file NALS membership will get access in March. And the way to find details from the seed exchange is to go to the Lily website, and you'll see down in the bottom next to my star, there's a link there to the seed exchange. And if you go to the next page, it'll tell you something about the seed exchange. The current year's seed exchange will be listed under new. And subdivided by division, division 1 being Asiatics, division 2s being Martigans, and so forth through to division 9, which would be the species. Prior year seed that hasn't already been snagged in previous exchanges will be offered under prior. And typically, as been mentioned, each packet of seed contains 16 to 20 seeds typically, although for scarce seeds that may be offered in small numbers, the packet numbers may be less than that. And where this is the case, this will be noted on the website purchase portal. Next slide then, please. So the next slide will show an example of the seed exchange. This is taken quite recently from the division 1, the Asiatics, and it shows how the process works. There's a web-based purchasing site, and where available, you can click on the images to see full-size pictures of both the pod parent, if you like, that's the mother, and the pollen parent, which is the father, if you like. And there are some things here that may be worthwhile mentioning. It's always good to know something about the seed that you're donating to the exchange. And so you can see some of them, congeniality crossed with sour cream raisin pie would be two known parents of the seeds that are being donated. Below it, if perhaps you have one particular lily, Rosalind, which is the mother, which creates a pod, but you don't really know what the father, what the pollen parent was, then that seed is still useful. It's just that we would classify it as being open pollinated. And it's always good to know something about the lily that you're donating. Ideally knowing whether it's an Asiatic. It's best to know the name. Perhaps you don't know the name, but you could supply a photograph. If you have a seed pod, which is your sort of, your daughter or neighbor's, favorite pink lily, and it's produced a pod, and you really don't know anything about either end of whether, you don't know a description about the mother or the father plant, then this one is probably best left for you to experiment yourself. Whereas in the seed exchange, knowing something about the plant, the parentage, is always a big help and would be encouraged. So next slide then, please. So the seed exchange, I was able to go back to prepare these slides, and I was able to look at the number of donors and where they came from as a function of time. And here on this stacked bar chart on the right, we have the USA, donors in the light blue color. The Canadians are in red. The sporadic UK contributors are in green. EU is purple, and New Zealand and Australia are in this golden color at the top. And I must apologize to Martin Toon and any other New Zealand people on this call for perhaps my insensitive choice of colors for that color bar, but at least it made it stand out. So one of the things that you can see is that, currently the seed exchange is presently reliant on a small number of dedicated donors. You can see also from the trend in the data going back, roughly the last 18 years, you can see the numbers of donors have, declined from 60 or so down to 20 or so. And although the number of donors has reduced over the years, what we're typically finding is that the donors are sending more seeds and from a wider variety of species and crosses. So the seed exchange list remains very, very robust. And in 2024, from my tabulation from the data that Stephanie sent me, we had 2,366 packets of seed available from 292 individual species or crosses. So there is something here for everybody. Whatever your interests are in lilies, whether it's martigans or Asiatics. But you can see from the sort of trend, decline with roughly 20 or so donors existing for the last, 4 or 6 years, that new donors are still needed. And so, we hope from this presentation, from Judith's presentation and these exhortations that, perhaps new donors will step up and donate seed for the 2025 exchange. Next slide then, Brian or Stephanie.
Lynn. That's okay.
So there are many ways of sending seed. Ideally, seed should be cleaned and candled with the chaff removed, as Brian, as Judith, has excellently shown in the first part of this talk. And seeds can be sent in coin envelopes, in glassine envelopes, Ziploc bags, really whatever is at hand. Although, small plastic bags or envelopes suitable for distribution are preferred. This is an example here of the photograph from seeds that I've either donated myself or have received. The two in the coin envelope, the buff coin envelopes are ones that I've donated in the past or have in my own collection in the freezer. I know that I've gone through and candled the seeds. And if you have a lot of seeds, it's helpful to know how many you're sending. I think numbers 4 and 1 are from Dam Crook. And so however you want to send the seed, please don't let the packaging deter you from donating seed, because we're going to count them out into smaller plastic packets anyway. And on the right-hand side, I show my name and my address, but that's also exists on the Lilies website and in the quarterly bulletin. So if you have seeds to donate, it's easy to try and track me down. Next slide then, please. Donating seeds from other countries, there is a process to follow. And it's not complicated, but there is a process. And if you step outside the process, it's possible to get your seeds returned. Regular overseas donors are very familiar with this process, but perhaps new donors, including people from Canada, please email me first to get the documentation and to confirm the process. And this, in a nutshell, is Martin Toon's donation that I from New Zealand that I received very recently, a month or so ago. And one of the things that's important is this green and yellow label that has to be printed in color. So if you want to donate seed but you don't have access to a color printer, then just let me know and I can mail you a printed version. Depending on the country where you're sending it from, you may need to include a customs declaration. And one of the important things for donating seed from foreign countries, because it's going to go to this APHIS station, a sort of plant inspection station, and an inspector is going to open the packet, and they're going to want to see a packing list saying that these are the seeds that we've included. They want to know the country of origin and where they were grown. And they want to be able to see the seed packets on the right-hand side. Now, this is what Martin sent to us. And, you know, this is complied with the process perfectly. You know, the inspector can lift up these packets of seeds and can see, you know, there's a, you know, modest number of seeds in it. You're not trying to sneak in anything untoward in these packages. And this goes through the process quite smoothly. Go to the next slide, please. The APHIS system, it's really a sort of small lots of seed, although it's sometimes called the small seed lots program. The seeds themselves don't necessarily have to be small. It actually covers anything from the side of chestnuts down to begonia seeds that might be so fine that you can scarcely see them. And there are some rules about how big and how much you can send. Each packet can't contain more than 10 grams of seed. And I checked on my sort of weighing scales in the kitchen, and 10 grams of seed is about half a cup. Now, that would actually be an awful lot of seed to donate, probably 1,000 or so seeds. But I think the main thing, like we see in Martin Toon's donation, is that it's avoid, I think, overstuffing the seed on envelopes, because if the inspector can't see that there's something inside the packet, they could reject the shipment. It's better to send multiple envelopes of that cross, and you can send up to 50 packets of any particular taxon and any particular cross. So just avoid overstuffing seeds. It's better to use a bigger bag or a multiple envelopes of that cross. So move on, please. But like I say, that if there are, you know, people, you know, who are concerned about donating seed from overseas countries, please let me know. And as we saw earlier, a couple of slides earlier, it's always good to send a photograph of the pollen parent and the pod parent of the lilies you were using in the cross. Like if Jim Alt was to donate seed from that cross that we saw in the video, ideally Jim would take a picture of the white lily and the picotee lily and send them to me, because a good photo is always a good selling point. And so photos may be emailed to the Seed Exchange chair. That's the email address again. Some people include a memory stick with the seed donation. If it's from in the US, that's quite easy. Or they could be sent or uploaded via a Dropbox link. So there's many ways to try and send these seeds. The images of the crosses. So just get in touch if you need assistance. If you're sending lots and lots of crosses, lots and lots of photographs, you may find that there's a sort of 32 megabyte limit on the email size. So you may have to send multiple emails, or perhaps, you know, it's easier just to set up a Dropbox, which we can do quite straightforwardly. So just get in touch if you need any assistance. Next slide then, please. One of the questions that people have asked me is, how much seed should they send? What should I send? How should I send it? How many seeds should I send? So as we mentioned, you know, ideally the seeds should be cleaned, candled, and counted if possible, if you're sending lots of seeds. Seeds are going to be subdivided into smaller packages for the seed exchange. So each packet will typically have 15 to 20 seeds, say. So, so as I say, send the seeds how best you can. So when it comes to the question of how many seeds to send, I pulled the data from the 2024 seed exchange. So what I'm showing here is on the x-axis, I'm showing the packets of seeds donated. And on the y-axis, I'm showing the packets of seeds that have been sold as of mid-August. And so you can see I have this gray dashed line, which is the sort of one line, or it would be the all sold line. So you can see that if you donated 10 packets of seed and 10 packets were sold, you'd lie on this green, on this dashed line. And the dots show all of the seed packets that were donated. Some of these data, of course, lie on top of each other. And it's colored by a division. And across the top, I also sort of annotate broadly, if you had 16 seeds per packet, how many sort of total number of seeds would have been donated for that cross. So one of the things that I think stands out is that there's an awful lot of data points down in the bottom left-hand corner of this plot. Maybe less than, sort of 160 seeds. And as Judith has mentioned, these seeds may come from one trumpet cross, perhaps. So if you only have small numbers of seeds, one pod per plant, then you're in very good company if you donate seed from that cross. I think what you also see is that as you donate more and more seeds, or if more and more packets of seeds are available, once we get more than 10 to 15 to 20 packets of seed available, we find very few of them sell out completely. And while selling out the seeds completely isn't the object of the seed exchange, I think it just shows that if you have 1,000 seeds of one particular cross, by all means donate them if you wish to. The reality is that the majority of those seeds are unlikely to get sold or snagged up during the seed exchange. So typically, I would say that 200 seeds per cross or per species is usually sufficient. And as Judith has mentioned, this could come from as few as 1, 2, or 3 pods on a particular plant. And broadly, 200 seeds is roughly 1 tablespoon of good seeds. This is an experiment I checked in our kitchen while pulling these slides together. So I would say to people who have seeds to donate, if you only have 40 seeds, that's very good. I know for some species that are in short supply, maybe there are only 10 seeds donated, and these might be offered as 2 packets of 5 seeds each. For some trumpet seeds, certainly we could have hundreds of seeds, and there could be 20 or 30 packets of 15 to 20 seeds each. So this, I hope, gives you some idea of how many seeds to donate. If you only have a few, that's perfectly okay. If you have thousands of seeds, then you can still donate it, of course. But the data would suggest you're unlikely to have them all sold out. So next slide, then, please, Brian. And like we say, I ideally, if you're only sort of sending seeds in small numbers, you can see each of these are a different cross. These are examples from Brian. They're sent in plastic packets. They're very easy to go and count these seeds, and perhaps you might expect that for these small numbers there may just be 1 packet of seed offered of these, or perhaps we'd split them in 2 and there'll be 2 packets of 10 seeds each. And so ideally, while 15 to 20 seeds would be the expectation, in some rare occurrences where, seed is donated in very small numbers. There could be fewer than that, and we will note it on the website. And I think that's probably the last slide, I think, Brian.
Yes, it is.
I wanted to make a
Thank you.
comment because I had asked Steve, the thing that held me back from donating is I wasn't sure how big a package he wanted, but I found these little 2 by 3 inch packets, little things, and I just ordered like 500 of those from eBay, places like that, and it was less than $10, and you can get smaller quantities. So people should know that would save you a lot of hassle. Instead of my sending you 2 or 3 things that are 200 seed, I would send you 10 packets that I've already counted them out and put them in those little labels and made them clean. So I want to do it what makes it the easiest for you. And that I just wanted you to know, because I thought to get those little packets, you'd have to get like 1,000. You'd have to buy big quantities because they did not used to be available in smaller quantities, and they are available in like hundreds. So if you did,
yes, what are we trying to do is help Steve out, because he said, as Stephanie had the experience of, there's 2,000 packets. So if he had to go through every single packet, that would be a mammoth job. So what we're trying to do is expedite things and make life as comfortable as possible for Steve. So thank you, Steve, and thank you, Judith. An excellent production, and
we
gave us a lot of
everybody to
information.
donate seed, and we want everybody to buy seed.
Yes. Is there any questions?
I have one other comment I wanted to make, because at first I had told Brian I didn't really think people were interested in I had just sent him those pictures because I was doing his pods for him. And I always keep notes that are kind of clarify, because I keep learning. I mean, every time you open a new pod, you learn something new. But I said, I don't think the people they're going to come to this video, to this thing, because they want to know, are their pods ready? And he said, oh, he thought people were interested, but I thought, let's sometime do a deal about that in a little greater depth for the few people who are more interested.
Yeah, we'll work on
If
other.
you let us know you're interested in that, we'll think about it. We'll do that. Okay.
Yes, we'll work on having another podcast.
For the next meeting, whenever you're ready.
Oh, an invite for the next meeting.
Okay.
We're ready. Okay.
Okay, our next meeting is Saturday, October the 26th. And we're going to have a bring your own bulbs Saturday. We'll learn about scaling bulbs and propagating lilies from scales. Judith, do you want to add anything else, or Brian?
I just got some great big beautiful bulbs from Conrad Miller of what's the Stone and Pane Yellow Blaze, because I told him I was interested, and he sent me like 3 extra huge bulbs that I can scale. And I think I'm going to go ahead and scale one now so you can see what it looks like in 4 weeks. But if people have particular questions and they send us those questions ahead of time, we're always just tickled pink to address your questions or your comments, because everybody, I think every single name on here is people who know a lot about this and who could have a lot of useful comments to add.
So nothing's in the chat.
So we'll see you in October, and bring your own bulbs.
And we'll be going over in detail how to scale, and how to put the scales in a baggie so that you can get little bulblets and reproduce your favorite lily.
There was a question on the chat from Karen Wright.
Okay. Should we be digging up the bulbs now for scaling? You could. And then you have to wash and dry them thoroughly. And you could put them in the crisper if there's just 1 bulb or 2 bulbs.
Use a little packing media, airy packing media. Yeah.
And and have a
You don't
little
want 'em-
breathing
'cause they
hole or
can dry
something,
out in the fridge. Yeah.
or else you can put them in dry vermiculite or dry peat moss, and put little holes in the plastic bag so that they can breathe, and then you can put them in the crisper, or you can store them in a cool area. But I don't know where you're
You
from,
can just dig it like 2 days before and
or you
wash it.
could dig it for 2 days before and wash it. Yeah,
You
but they
just don't
should
want
be
them
nice
to
and dry.
dry out. That's all.
Yeah, you have to have them dried out. They definitely have to be dried out. The worst thing to do is to not dry out a bulb, because if it isn't thoroughly dried, it'll get moldy very quickly.
Yeah, you want the outside, but you don't want the bulb itself to dry out. You
Just want the outside.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. Minnesota, yes. Minnesota, I'd probably dig it now.
I
And,
wanted to hear how everybody's bulb sales went. That's why we did this today, because a lot of the societies had bulb sales yesterday. Have we heard how they went?
how did it go, Lauren?
We sold about 150 bulbs. We
Okay.
have another event tomorrow night and then one down in Calgary next Saturday.
That's good. That's how you get new people, is when you have bulbs and they try them out and they're tickled pink. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess we're all set. No
Yes.
other questions? Oh, yes, Chuck. You just waved your hand, so oh, you're waving goodbye. Okay. Well, we'll see you.
Yes,
Okay.
I was waving goodbye. Good to see you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll sign out then. Thank you very much. And thank you for Judith, and thank you, Steve. Beautiful production. Thank you.